And hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may happen to be, my brandy bucks and toques and bulgers and bagginses and harfoots, fallow hides and stores too, I guess. Anyway, good evening, good morning, welcome to all of you. Lovely to see you. If only virtually. That's still pretty good. And I'm very happy to be here. I'm Tad. I will be reading some of this book written conveniently enough by me so that I have copies around. And I think that's basically the gist of what's going to happen between now and 2 o'clock. My time, and because right now my time it is 1 o'clock or about 1:01. And anything of interest to report? Oh, we just super busy around here. We're doing a bunch of stuff because the house is getting appraised. So we are repainting the deck and we are trying to build a fence in the back that will keep the dog from escaping anymore. Meanwhile, two of our four young people returned from after having been away for a month, involved in various complicated things, preparing for what's going to happen for them next, which is going to be moving up to Northern California. But they were doing some other stuff they had to do first. So they just came back tonight, and that was all very exciting because, of course, we got to hear all the stories of what had been happening with them, and the dogs were very pleased to have two of their people return because especially big dog Johnny never feels quite right unless everybody is around where he can keep an eye on them. I don't know which part of his genetic heritage that is, but he is yes, yes, Debbie, the gorilla is wearing a t-shirt, or actually I just kind of left my Jimi Hendrix t-shirt there. So Johnny, of course, is always very nervous when the full quorum of household people are not here. So he's finally able to rest easy tonight because all of his people are at least temporarily all back in the house. The other good news from that is that I have been taking care of the serpent. I believe I mentioned to you guys. I've been taking care of the serpent for the last month. She's a very nice snake. Her name is Irwin. Full name Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. And I never saw her during the entire time. She's a ball python. And they're apparently not the most active snakes in the world. And every time I would have communication with the young people to whom the snake belongs, I would say, still haven't seen her. And they would say, oh, that's okay. That's kind of how she is. And meanwhile, I was, turning on and off all the things that have to be turned off, the heat lamps and the regular lamps and the humidifier and all these things because she's a tropical snake. I wish I had people coming in and turning on humidifiers and heat lamps for me. Seems to me that somewhere in this whole pet thing, I got the wrong end of the stick because I seem to be doing all the work and the pets seem to be just standing around waiting for me to do things for them. Anyway, so the good news that came out of that, though, is that at one point my daughter came in and said she just poked her head out of her hide, which is her place where she hangs out in her terrarium, I guess. She just poked her head out of her hide and looked around. Now, I literally had not seen her. I was only, I was not entirely certain that I had not somehow killed the snake, just because I'm a worrier, So, of course, that's the first thing I think of when I haven't seen the pet I'm taking care of is, oh my God, I've killed it. But apparently I did not. So I am off the hook. The next time they're going away, they're taking the snake with them because it's part of their family. And unfortunately, I tried to offer them the two dogs, the two of our two remaining dogs as well, and our cat, and they didn't want any of them. So I guess they're only taking the snake. What else? So anyway, yeah. So it's been crazy busy all week. Because we're getting our deck painted. First, they have to blast all the old paint off of it. So it's been all week long. We've had people out there with high pressure hoses, for hours and hours. So that's been entertaining. Meanwhile, somehow I managed to get work done. Oh, and spent literally 20 hours trying to get our car registered. So that's finally finished after many, many, many hours. So that's kind of been what really honestly, my week has been in the last week since I talked to y'all. I get up in the morning. I start taking care of stuff, returning phone calls, doing things, arranging things, making appointments. Then I go out and do them. And then I get back in the afternoon and I have a few hours, before everything falls apart again. So I sit down and write as fast as I can. Fortunately, I'm at a place now in Navigator's Children where I am no longer doing that really fiddly stuff that I was telling you guys about, where I was having to plug together things and pop things out and pop new things in and try and make them all line up. And now I'm just writing forward to the end of the story, which is vastly more relieving for a number of reasons, not least of which is that, as I've said to you before, you can actually count the pages that you've written. And no matter what else has happened, you can go like, hey, I did work. I got work done on the thing that pays the bills. Now, I don't want you all to think, oh, so he's just a mercenary. He's only doing this for the money. No. I'm sure some of you out there have jobs you really love. I am very fortunate that way. I am thrilled to be doing what I do for a living. It perfectly suits me. It suits my control freakishness. It suits my obsessive compulsive nature because, these are complicated worlds that I get to do all the planning with. It suits my complete lack of interest in getting up in the morning. Not that I don't get up in the morning, but I mean, I get up much later than I used to when I worked normal jobs way back when. So, I love my job. But as you all know, those of you who have had jobs that you loved, it still works. So it's super nice just to be able to see that I'm moving things forward, to feel like I've accomplished something. Because sometimes when you're doing editing or just thinking about things, you don't really feel at the end of the day like you're certain you've done anything useful. Anyway, so I am in the process of finishing up the first draft of Navigator's Children, which I am pleased to say is about 700 pages now and probably going to go about 200 more. So that's all good. I'm happy with that. And the dog is at least somewhat content, although he still can't run around in the backyard because we still don't have the fence fixed. And he already caused all kinds of trouble getting out of it about 5 times. So, but generally, as I said, car now registered. My eldest child can finally take his driver's test, which he's been putting off for years and years and years. But since we're going to throw them all out at some point, he's going to need a driver's license. So slowly, things are coming together. And we're getting things beaten into shape. And I do mean beaten, because a lot of it feels like it's just plain hard, smash, thump, bang. It's like working in the mines or something. Anyway, so before I start reading, let me go down the list here and see who is all checked in, or at least who have said hello. And Wouter, first off the bat, how's the brain? Wouter asks. it's still encased in my skull, so I guess that's the best I can hope for under the circumstances. It's a bit fuzzy and swollen. Fuzzy as in, like when you leave food out too long and fuzz starts to grow on it. But it's working more or less, so I'm not complaining. So that's how the brain is. Patrick, hello, good morning, and good to see you too. Debbie, good morning, good morning. Anamika, hello, hello, nice to see you. Chris, good morning to you. And Chris says good morning to all you lovely people if you haven't seen it. Iris, good morning and good evening to you. Well, good evening to me, good morning to you. Technically it's morning, but I've been up all day, so it doesn't feel like morning to me. Anyway, who else? Petra. Hello, Petra. Christine and Petra are back from Normandy and happy to join us again, and we're happy to have you. Ron, hello, hello. Ron is still reading the final version of Into the Narrow Dark. Thank you for all your help, Ron. I mean, obviously, as I've told everybody here, Ron and Ilva and Jeremy and another person, Angela, who doesn't make it to these readings, have all been incredibly important to getting this new Austenard series done. Which, now that I think about it, it's not just 4 long volumes. It's 4 long volumes and 2 short volumes. So it's a, what would that be, a hexology? I don't know. Somebody can look up the term for a 6-book series and let me know. Mark, this is Mark Redmond checking in. Good morning, good morning. Hazel, that's my mom-in-law. Hello, sweetie. Good to see you. Your daughter is fine. She's sleeping. She's actually in a very chipper mood at the moment because the house is torn up and we're doing things. We're replacing bathroom fans and stuff like that. And that always makes your daughter feel happy, like life is going forward. So for those of you who don't know Deb personally, my wife, my helpmeet, my partner in crime, Deborah is one of those people who it's super important to her to feel like she's moving forward. Whereas for me, it's super important for me to feel like I'm putting down my roots and I'm making things as calm as possible and I'm able to go deeper and more completely into things and to really start to appreciate the things around me. And Deb is very different. Deb is like, if we're not going forward, yeah, it's like she's the old misnomer about sharks, which is something that's not actually true. But that whole idea of like, if they don't go forward, they die. Excuse me, it's swim or die if you're a shark. That's what people always used to say. And that very much is not, if it's not true of sharks, it certainly my wife seems to feel it's true. It's really crucial to her to have like things and that things are moving and changing and renewing themselves. And I'm like, I just want to be quiet and left alone so I can get some work done. But that's okay, because right now she's in a super good mood because we've got the place ripped up and we've got workmen crawling around on things, and that makes her very happy. Anyway, so Hazel, your daughter's in good shape. Your granddaughter and Tyler have returned. Everybody's healthy. The snake is not dead. And now you've got the update. And Johnny hasn't escaped lately. So, Kristen, hello. Good to see you. Yes, I'm glad you fixed the pronunciation. The punctuation, rather, because I'm confused easily. Debbie, I already answered your question. Yes, the gorilla is sort of wearing a t-shirt. I actually just laid it out on the gorilla just to make for a little change of pace, because otherwise it's just a big black lump of gorilla back there with a bowler hat on. And it's very clear when you're in the room with me. But that brings problems of its own for any sane person. Breen. Hello, Breen. I don't know if we've had you aboard before, but lovely to see you. Really enjoying Brothers of the Wind. Thank you very much. I enjoyed writing it. I look forward to writing more Austenard history in future days. And definitely one of the things on my radar is the story of the fall of Azua. And that's one of the proposals I sent to my publisher saying, one of these days, I really want to write this book, and here's my idea for it. And it would be another short novel, but not short, not short like Caliban's Hour or The Heart of What Was Lost, but more like the length of Tail Chaser Song or Brothers of the Wind or something. So not a big, huge multi-volume thing, but definitely a fairly substantial single book. Anyway, so Breen, nice to see you. Anthony, hello, hello. Good morning. And good morning and good to have you. Wouter, I already said hello to you. What, are you trying to get me to say hello to you twice? Is there some weird competition going on? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, but it's always good to see you. Now this slid around all over the place. So who have I not said hello to? Ilva! Hello, darling. You're in rehab but feeling wretched? Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you're feeling wretched. Let me know if there's anything I can do. We should have a conversation. And you can tell me how wretched it is, and I will sympathize with you. James, hello. Good to see you. And Stephen, pleasure to have you. So nice to have all of you here. And as I mentioned, I am going to read, and that's just what I'm about to start doing. We, last time, namely last Sunday evening. Oh, and there's Sonia. Hello, Sonia. Good to see you too. Last Sunday I was reading, and okay. Anyway, I was reading, and we had gotten past the second chapter and started the the fourth chapter, which is called Cricket Cage, because that's where Morghennes had stashed the baby birds that Simon brought to him. And Simon is now is earning his story by sweeping. And that's what I'm going to continue with. So Simon is with Dr. Morghennes, and he is earning his story by sweeping. Okay. Where was we? Okay. Well, Simon. Oh, and don't be bashful about wielding that broom while you eat. The young are so flexible. Now, correct me, please, if I misspeak. The day today is Drawers Day, the 15th of November, and the year is 1164, is it not? I think so. Excellent. Do put that over on the stool, will you? So, the 1164th year since what? Do you know? Morghennes leaned forward. Simon pulled a sour face. The doctor knew he was a mooncalf and was teasing him. How was a scullion supposed to know about such things? He continued to sweep in silence. After some moments he looked up. The doctor was chewing, staring at him intently over a crusty chunk of dark bread. What sharp blue eyes the old man has. Simon turned away again. Well, then, the doctor said around a mouthful. Since what? I don't know, Simon muttered, hating the sound of his own resentful voice. So be it. You don't know, or you think you don't. Do you listen to the proclamations when the crier reads them? Sometimes, when I'm at market. Otherwise, Rachel tells me what they say. And what comes at the end? They read the date at the end, do you remember? And mind that crystal urn. Boy, you sweep like a man shaving his worst enemy. What does it say at the end? Simon, nettled with shame, was about to throw the broom down and leave when suddenly a phrase floated up from the depths of his memory, bringing with it market sounds, the wind snapping of pennants and awnings, and the clean smell of spring grass strewn underfoot. Since the founding, he was sure. He heard it as though he were standing on Main Row. Excellent! The doctor lifted his jar as if in salute and knocked back a long swallow. Now, the founding of what? Don't worry, he continued as Simon began to shake his head. I'll tell you. I don't expect young men these days, raised as they are on apocryphal errantry and daring-do, to know much of the real substance of events. The doctor shook his own head, Doctor shook his head, mock sadly. The Nabeni Imperium was founded, or declared to be founded, 1160, whatever it was, years ago by Tiagoras, the first imperator. At that time, the legions of Naban ruled all the countries of men, north and south, on both sides of the river Glenawant. But Naban is small. Simon was astonished. It's just a small part of King John's kingdom. That, young man, Morgane said, is what we call history. Empires have a tendency to decline, kingdoms to collapse. Given 1,000 years or so, anything can happen. Actually, Naban's zenith lasted considerably less than that. What I was getting to, however, is that Naban once ruled men, and men lived side by side with the Scythi folk. The king of the Scythi reigned here in Azua, the Hayholt, as we call it. The Earl King, Earl is an old word for Scytha, refused humans the right to enter his people's lands except by special grant, and the humans, more than a little afraid of the Scythi, obeyed. What are Scythi? You said they're not the little folk. Morgane smiled. I appreciate your interest, lad, especially when I haven't put in killing or maiming once yet today. But I would appreciate it even more if you were not so shy with the broom. Dance with her, boy. Dance with her. Look, clean that off, if you will. Morganes trotted over to the wall and pointed to a patch of soot several cubits in diameter. It looked very much like a footprint. Simon decided not to ask, and instead set to sweeping it loose from the white plastered stone. Ah, many thanks to you. I've been wanting to get that down for months, since last year's Harrow's Eve, as a matter of fact. Now, where in the name of the lesser Vistrals was I? Oh, your questions. The Scythi. Well, they were here first, and perhaps will be here when we're gone, when we're all gone. They are as different from us as man is from the animal, but somewhat similar, too. The doctor stopped to consider. To be fair, man and animal both live a similarly brief span of years in Ostenard, and this is not true of Scythi and man. If the fair folk are not actually deathless, they are certainly much longer lived than any mortal man, even our nonagenarian king. It could be that they do not die at all, except by choice or violence. Perhaps if you are a Scytha, violence itself might be a choice. Morganes trailed off. Simon was staring at him open-mouthed. Oh, shut that jaw, boy. You look like Inch. It's my privilege to wander in thought a little bit. Would you rather go back and listen to the mistress of chambermaids? Simon's mouth closed, and he resumed sweeping the soot off the wall. He had changed the original footprint shape to something resembling a sheep. He stopped from time to time to eye it appraisingly. An itch of boredom made itself known at the back of his neck. He liked the doctor, and would rather be here than anywhere else. But the old man did go on so. Maybe if he swept a little more of the top part away, it would look like a dog. His stomach growled quietly. Morganes went on to explain, in what Simon thought was perhaps unnecessary detail, about the era of peace between the subjects of the ageless Earl King and those of the upstart human imperators. So Scythe and man found a sort of balance, the old man said. They even traded together a little. Simon's stomach rumbled loudly. The doctor smiled a tiny smile and put back the last onion, which he had just lifted from the table. Men brought spices and dyes from the southern islands, or precious stones from the Grianspog mountains in Hernistir. In return, they received beautiful things from the Earl King's coffers, objects of cunning and mysterious workmanship. Simon's patience was at an end. But what about the shipmen, the rimmersmen? What about the iron swords? He looked about for something to gnaw on. The last onion? He sidled cautiously over. Morghennes was facing the window. While he gazed out at the gray noontide, Simon pocketed the papery brown thing and hurried back to the wall spot. Much diminished in size, the splotch now looked like a serpent. Morghennes continued without turning away from the window. I suppose there has been quite a bit of peaceful times and people in my history today. He wagged his head, walking back to his seat. Peace will soon give way, never fear. He shook his head again, and a lock of thin hair settled across his wrinkled forehead. Simon gnawed furtively at his onion. Naban's golden age lasted a little over 4 centuries, until the earliest coming of the Rimmersmen to Ostenard. The Nabani Imperium had begun to turn in on itself. Tiagoras' line had finally died out, and every new imperator who seized power was another cast of the dice cup. Some were good men who tried to hold the realm together. Others, like Crexus the goat, were worse than any northern reavers. And some, like Enfortus, were just weak. During Enfortus's reign, the Iron Wielders came. Naban decided to withdraw from the north altogether. They fell back across the river Glenowent so quickly that many of the northern frontier outposts found themselves entirely deserted, left behind to join the oncoming Rimmersmen or die. Am I boring you, boy? Simon, leaning against the wall, jerked himself upright to face Morghennes' knowing smile. No, Doctor, no. I was just closing my eyes to listen better. Go on. Actually, all of these names were making him a bit drowsy, and he wished the doctor would hurry along to the parts with battles in them. But he did like to be the only one in the entire castle to whom Morghennes was speaking. The chambermaids didn't know anything about these kinds of things, men things. What did maids or serving girls know about armies and flags and swords? Simon? Oh, yes. Go on. He whirled to sweep off the last of the wall blot as the doctor resumed. The wall was clean. Had he finished without knowing? So I will try and make the story a little briefer, lad. As I was saying, Naban withdrew its armies from the north, becoming for the first time purely a southern empire. It was just the beginning of the end. Of course, as time passed, the Imperium folded itself up just like a blanket, smaller and smaller, until today they are nothing more than a duchy, a peninsula with its few attendant islands. What in the name of Paldier's arrow are you doing? Simon was contorting himself like a hound trying to scratch a difficult spot. Yes, there was the last of the wall dirt, a snake-shaped smear across the back of his shirt. He had leaned against it. He turned sheepishly to Morghennes, but the doctor only laughed and continued. Without the imperial garrison, Simon, the north was in chaos. The shipmen had captured the northernmost part of the Frost March, naming their new home Rimmersgard. Not content with that, the Rimmersmen were fanning out southward, sweeping all before them in a bloody advance. Put those folios in a stack against the wall, will you? They robbed and ruined other men, making captives of many, but the Scythi they deemed evil creatures. With fire and cold iron they hunted the fair folk to their death everywhere. Careful with that one, there's a good lad. Over here, Doctor? Yes, but, bones of Anaxos, don't drop them. Set them down. If you knew the terrible midnight hours I spent rolling dice in an Ushinate graveyard to get my hands on them. There, much better. Now, the people of Hernistir, a proud, fierce people whom even the Nabani imperators never really conquered, were not at all willing to bend their necks to Rimmersgard. They were horrified by what the northerners were doing to the Scythi. The Hernistiri had been of all men the closest to fair folk. There is still visible today the mark of an ancient trade road between this castle and the Tague at Hernis-Adharc. The Lord of Hernistir and the Earl King made desperate compact, and for a while held the northern tide at bay. But, even combined, their resistance could not last forever. Fingil, king of the Rimmersmen, swept down across the Frost March over the borders of the Earl King's territory. Morgane smiled sadly. We're coming to the end now, young Simon. Never fear. Coming to the end of it all. In the year 663, the two great hosts came to the plains of Samrath, the summer field north of the river Glenewent. For 5 days of terrible, merciless carnage, the Hernistiri and the Scythi held back the might of the Rimmersmen. On the 6th day, though, they were set on, treacherously, from their unprotected flank by an army from the Thrivings, who had long coveted the riches of Erkinland and the Scythi for their own. They made a fearful charge under cover of darkness. The defense was broken. The Hernistiri chariots smashed. The white stag of the house of Hern trampled into the bloody dirt. It is said that 10,000 men of Hernistir died in the field that day. No one knows how many Scythi fell, but their losses were grievous too. Those Hernistiri who survived fled back to the forests of their home. In Hernistir, Samrath is today a name only for hatred and loss. 10,000? Simon whistled. His eyes shone with the terror and grandness of it all. Morganes noted the boy's expression with a small grimace, but did not comment. That was the day that Scythi mastery in Ostenard came to an end, even though it took 3 long years of siege before Azwa fell to the victorious northerners. If not for the strange, horrible magics worked by the Earl King's son, there would likely have not been a single Scythi to survive the fall of the castle. Many did, however, fleeing to the forests and south to the waters and elsewhere. Now Simon's attention was fixed as though nailed. And the Earl King's son? What was his name? What kind of magic did he do? A sudden thought. How about Prester John? I thought you were going to tell me about the king, our king. Another day, Simon. Morganes fanned his brow with a sheaf of whisper-thin parchments, although the chamber was quite cool. There is much to tell about the Dark Ages after Azwa fell. Many stories. The Rimmersmen ruled here until the dragon came. In later years, while the dragon slept, other men held the castle. Many years and several kings in the Hayholt, many dark years and many deaths, until John came. He trailed off, passing a hand over his face as though to brush weariness away. But what about the king of the Scythes' son? Simon asked quietly. What about the terrible magic? About the Earl King's son, it is better to say nothing. But why? Enough questions, boy, Morghennes growled, waving his hands. I am tired of talking. Simon was offended. He had only been trying to hear the whole story. Why were grown people so easily upset? However, it was best not to boil the hen who lays golden eggs. I'm sorry, Doctor. He tried to look contrite, but the old scholar looked so funny with his pink-flushed monkey face and his wispy hair sticking up. Simon felt his lip curling toward a smile. Morghennes saw it, but maintained his stern expression. Truly, I'm sorry. No change. What to try next? Thank you for telling me the story. Not a story, Morghennes roared. History! Now be off with you. Come back tomorrow morning ready to work, for you have still barely begun today's work. Simon got up, trying to keep his smile in check, but as he turned to go, it broke loose and wriggled across his face like a ribbon snake. As the door closed behind him, he heard Morghennes cursing whatever eldritch demons had hidden his jug of porter. Afternoon sunlight was knifing down through chinks in the heavy clouds as Simon made his way back to the inner bailey. On the face of it, he seemed to dawdle and gape, a tall, awkward, red-haired boy in dust-caked clothes. Inside, he was a swarm with strange thoughts, a hive of buzzing, murmuring desires. Look at this castle, he thought. Old and dead, stone pressed upon lifeless stone, a pile of rocks inhabited by small-minded creatures. But it had been different once. Great things had happened here. Horns had blown, swords had glittered. Great armies had crashed against each other and rebounded like the waves of the Kinslaw battering the Seagate wall. Hundreds of years had passed, but it seemed to Simon it was happening just now, only for him, while the slow, witless folk who shared the castle with him crawled past, thinking of nothing but the next meal and a nap directly afterward. Idiots. As he came through the postern gate, a glimmer of light caught his eye, drawing it up to the distant walkway that ringed Yeldon's tower. A girl stood there, bright and small as a piece of jewelry, her green dress and golden hair embracing the ray of sunlight as if it had arrowed down from the sky for her alone. Simon could not see her face, but he was somehow certain she was beautiful. Beautiful and forgiving as the image of the immaculate Elysia that stood in the chapel. For a moment, that flash of green and gold kindled him like a spark on dry timber. He felt all the bother and resentment that he had carried disappear, burned away in a hasty second. He was as light and buoyant as swan's down, prey to any breeze that might carry him away, might waft him up to that golden gleam. Then he looked away from the wonderful, faceless girl, down at his own ragged garments. Rachel was waiting, and his dinner had gotten cold. A certain indefinable weight climbed back into its accustomed seat, bending his neck and slumping his shoulders as he trudged toward the servants' quarters. And that's the end of chapter 4. But we have plenty of time, so I'm going to start chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Tower Window. Novander was sputtering out in wind and delicate snow. Decander waited patiently, year's end in its train. King John Presbyter had taken ill after calling his 2 sons back to the Hayholt and had returned to his shadowed room, again to be surrounded by leeches, learned doctors, and scolding, fretting body servants. Bishop Demetus swept in from St. Sutrin's, Urchester's great church, and set up shop at John's bedside, shaking the king awake at all hours to inspect the texture and heft of the royal soul. The old man, continuing to weaken, bore both pain and priest with gallant stoicism. In the tiny chamber next to the king's own, that Towser had occupied for 40 years, the sword Brightnail lay, oiled and scabbarded, wrapped in fine linens, at the bottom of the jester's oaken chest. Far and wide across the broad face of Ostenard the word flew. Prester John was dying. Hernistir in the west and northern Rimmersgard immediately dispatched delegations to the bedside of stricken Erkenland. Old Duke Isgrimner, John's left-hand companion at the great table, brought 50 Rimmersmen from Elvritsala and Narved, the whole company wrapped head to foot in furs and leather for the winter crossing of the Frost March. Only 20 Hernistiri accompanied King Luth's son Gwithin, but the bright gold and silver they wore flashed bravely, outshining the poor cloth of their garments. The castle began to come alive with the music of languages long unheard. Rimmerspach and Perdruanese and Harcha tongue. Naraxi's rolling island speech floated in the gate-yard, and the stables echoed to the sing-song cadences of the Thrivings-men. The Grasslanders, as always, most comfortable around horses. Over these and all others hung the droning speech of Naban, the busy tongue of Mother Church and her Adonite priests, taking charge, as always, of the comings and goings of men and their souls. In the tall Hayholt and Urchester below, these small armies of foreigners came together and flowed apart, for the most part without incident. Although many of these peoples had been ancient enemies, nearly 80 years beneath the High King's ward had healed many wounds. More gills of ale were bought than harsh words traded. There was one worrisome exception to this rule of harmony, one difficult to miss or misunderstand. Everywhere they met, under Hayholt's broad gates or in the narrow alleyways of Urchester, Prince Elias's green-liveried soldiers and Prince Josua's gray-shirted retainers jostled and argued, mirroring in public the private division of the king's sons. Prester John's Erkenguard were called upon to break up several ugly brawls. At last, one of Josua's supporters was stabbed by a young Merriman noble, an intimate of the heir apparent. Luckily, Josua's man took no fatal harm. The blow was a drunken one and poorly aimed, and the partisans were forced to heed the rebukes of the older courtiers. The troops of the 2 princes returned to cold stares and disdainful sneers. Open bloodshed was averted. These were strange days in Erkenland and in all of Ostenard, days freighted with equal measures of sorrow and excitement. The king was not dead, but it seemed he soon would be. The whole world was changing. How could anything remain the same once Prester John no longer sat the Dragonbone chair? Udin's day dream, Dror's day better, Frey day best, Saturn's day, market day, Sunday rest. Down the creaking stairs, 2 at a clip, Simon sang the old rhyme at the top of his voice. He almost knocked over Sophrona, the linen mistress, as she led a squadron of blanket-burdened maids in at the pine garden door. She threw herself back against the door jamb with a little shriek as Simon pounded by, then waved a skinny fist at his departing back. "I'll tell Rachel!" she shouted. Her charges stifled laughter. Who cared for Sophrona? Today was Saturn's day, market day, and Judith the cook had given Simon 2 pennies to buy some things for her, and a farthing piece, glorious Saturn's day, to spend on himself. The coins made a lovely, suggestive clink in his leather purse as he spiraled out through the castle's acres of long circular courtyards, out the inner bailey gate to Middle Bailey, nearly empty now since its residents, the soldiers and the artisans, were mostly on duty or at market. In Outer Bailey, animals milled in the commons yard, bumping miserably together in the cold, guarded by herders who looked scarcely more cheerful. Simon bustled along the rows of low houses, storage rooms, and animal sheds, many of them so old and overgrown with winter-naked ivy that they seemed only warty growths on the high keep's inner walls. The sun was glinting through the clouds on the carvings that swarmed the mighty chalcedony face of the Nerulaw gate. As he slowed to a puddle-dodging trot, staring open-mouthed at the intricate depictions of King John's victory over Ardrivis, the battle that had brought Naban at last under the royal hand, Simon heard the tumult of swift hooves and the shrill squeak of cartwheels. He looked up in horror to find himself faced with the white rolling eyes of a horse, mud gouting from beneath its hooves as it plunged through the Nerulaw gate. Simon flung himself out of the way and felt the wind on his face as the horse thundered by, the cart drawn behind it, pitching wildly. He had a brief glimpse of the driver, dressed in a dark hooded cloak lined with scarlet. The man's eyes raked him as the cart hurtled past. They were black and shiny, like the cruel button orbs of a shark. Although the contact was fleeting, Simon felt almost that the driver's gaze burned him. He reeled back, clutching at the stone facing of the gate, and watched as the cart disappeared around the track of Outer Bailey. Chickens squawked and flapped in its wake, except for those that lay crushed and bloody in the wagon's ruts. Muddied feathers drifted to the ground. "Here, boy, not hurt, are you?" One of the gate warders peeled Simon's trembling hand from the carvings and set him back upright. "Get on with you, then." Snow swirled in the air and stuck melting to his cheeks as he walked down the long hill toward Urchester. The chink of coins in his pocket now played to a slower, wobbly-kneed rhythm. "That priest is as mad as the moon," Simon heard the warder say to his gate companion. "Were he not Prince Elias's man?" 3 little children, following their toiling mother up the damp hill path, pointed at long-legged Simon as he passed, laughing at the expression on his pale face. Main Row was roofed all over with stitched skins that stretched across the wide thoroughfare, from building to building. At each way crossing were set great stone fire cairns, most, but certainly not all, of their smokes billowing up through the holes in the roof tenting. Snow fluttering down through the chimney holes sizzled and hissed in the hot air. Warming themselves by the flames, or strolling and talking, all the while surreptitiously examining the goods displayed on every side, Urchester and Hayholt folks mixed with those of the outer fiefs, eddying together in and out of the wide central row, which ran 2 full leagues from the Nerulaw gate to Battle Square at the city's far end. Caught up in the press, Simon found his spirits reviving. What should he care for a drunken priest? After all, it was market day. Today, the usual army of marketers and shrill-voiced hawkers, wide-eyed provincials, gamblers, cut-purses, and musicians was swelled by the soldiery of the various missions to the dying king. Rimmersman, Hernestiri, Werensteiner, or Perdruinese, Their swagger and bright garb caught Simon's jackdaw fancy. He followed one group of blue and gold-clad Nabani legionaries, admiring their strut and easy superiority, understanding without language the offhand way they insulted each other. He was edging up closer, hoping for a clear look at the short stabbing swords they wore scabbarded high on their waists, when one of them, a bright-eyed soldier wearing a thin dark mustache, turned and saw him. "Hey-ya, brothers," he said with a grin, grabbing at one of his fellow's arms. "Look now, a young, sneaking thief, I wager, and one who has his eye on your purse, Touris." Both men squared to face Simon, and the heavy, bearded one called Touris gave the youth a grim stare. "Did he touch it, then I would kill," he growled. His command of the Westerling speech was not as sure as the first man's. He seemed to lack the other's humor as well. 3 other legionaries had come now to join the first pair. They gradually closed in until Simon felt like a winded fox. "What's here, Gellies?" one of the new arrivals asked Touris's companion. "Where found ye? Did this one steal?" Nay, Gellies chuckled. "I was but having sport with Touris. Skinny one here did nothing." "I have my own purse," Simon said indignantly. He untied it from his belt and waved it in the soldiers' smirking faces. "I'm no thief. I live in the king's household. Your king." The soldiers all laughed. "Yeah, listen to him," Gellies shouted. "Our king, he says, so very bold." Simon could see now that the young legionary was drunk. Some, but not all, of his fascination turned to disgust. "Hey, lads," Gellies waggled his eyebrows. "Mulvesne kenit drenisent. They say, let us beware this pup then, and let him sleep." Another round of hilarity followed. Simon, red-faced, secured his purse and turned to go. "Goodbye, Castle Mouse," one of the soldiers called mockingly. Simon did not turn or speak, but hurried away. He had gone past one of the fire cairns and out from under the main row awnings when he felt a hand upon his shoulder. He whirled, thinking that the Naban men had returned to insult him further, but instead found a plump man with a weather-hardened pink face. The stranger wore the grey robe and tonsure of a mendicant friar. "Your pardon, my young lad," he said with a Hernister man's crackling burr. "I only wish to find out if you're safe then, if these Gairach fellas had done you harm." The stranger reached out to Simon and patted him as if searching for damage. His heavy-lidded eyes, fitted round about with wrinkles marking the curves of a frequent smile, nevertheless held something back, a deeper shadow, troubling but not frightening. Simon realized he was staring, almost against his will, and shied back. "No, thank you, Father," he said, startled into the patterns of formality. "They were just making sport of me. No harm." "Good, that is. Very good. Oh, forgive me, I've not introduced myself. I'm Brother Kadrach, Ikran here, of the Vildriven Order." He pulled a small, self-deprecatory smile. His breath smelled of wine. "I came with Prince Quithin and his men." "Who might you be?" "Simon. I live in the Hayhold." He made a vague gesture toward the castle. The friar smiled again, saying nothing, then turned to watch a Hirka man walk by, dressed in bright, disparate colors and leading a muzzled bear on a chain. When the duo had passed, Kadrach returned his small, sharp eyes to Simon. "There are some that say the Hirkas can talk to animals. Have you heard? Especially their horses, and that the animals understand perfectly." The friar gave a mocking shrug, as if to show that a man of God naturally would not believe such nonsense. Simon did not reply. He, of course, had also heard such tales related about the wild Hirkemen. Shem Horsegroom swore the stories were pure truth. The Hirkes were often seen at market, where they sold beautiful horses at outrageous prices and befuddled the villagers with tricks and puzzles. Thinking about them, especially their less than honest reputation, Simon put a hand down and grabbed his leather purse, reassuring himself by the feel of the coins inside. "Thank you for your help, Father," he said at last, although he could not actually remember the man doing anything helpful. I must go now. I have spices to buy." Cadrak looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to remember something, a clue to which might be hidden in Simon's face. At last he said, "I would like to ask you a favor, young man." "What?" Simon said suspiciously. "As I mentioned, I am a stranger in your Urchester. Perhaps you would be good enough to guide me around for a short while, just to help me. You could then go on your way, having done a good turn." "Oh." Simon felt somewhat relieved. His first impulse was to say no. It was so rarely that he got an afternoon to himself at the market. But how often did you get to talk with an Adenite monk from pagan Hernesteer? Also, this brother Cadrak did not seem like the type who only wanted to lecture you about sin and damnation. He looked the man over again, but the monk's face was unreadable. "Well, I suppose so. Certainly. Come along. Do you want to see the Niskadu dancers in Battle Square?" Cadrak was an interesting companion. Although he talked freely, telling Simon of the cold journey from Hernus Adharc to Urchester with Prince Gwithin, and made frequent jests about the passers-by and their various exotic costumes, still he seemed restrained, watching always for something, even as he laughed at his own stories. He and Simon wandered the market for a good part of the afternoon, looking at the tables of cakes and dried vegetables that stood against the shop walls of Main Row, smelling the warm smells of the bread bakers and chestnut vendors. Noting Simon's wistful gaze, the friar insisted they stop and buy a rough straw basket of roasted nuts, which he kindly paid for, giving the chap-faced chestnut man a half-farthing piece nimbly plucked from a pocket in his grey cassock. After burning fingers and tongues trying to eat the nut meats, they conceded defeat and stood watching a comical argument between a wine merchant and a juggler blocking his wine shop doorway while they waited for their purchase to cool. Next, they halted to watch a Osiris play being enacted for a gaggle of shrieking children and fascinated adults. The puppets bobbed and bowed, Osiris in his white gown being chased by the Imperator Crexus, wearing goat horns and a beard, and waving a long barb-headed pike. At last Osiris was captured and hung upon the execution tree. Crexus, his voice high and shrill, leaped about, poking and tormenting the tree-nailed Savior. The children, wildly excited, shouted abuse at the capering Imperator. Cadrak nudged Simon. "Do you see?" he asked, pointing a thick finger toward the front of the puppet stage. The curtain that hung from the stage to the ground billowed, as if in a strong breeze. Cadrak nudged Simon again. "Would you not say that this is a fine representation of our Lord?" he asked, never once taking his eyes from the flapping cloth. Above, Crexus jigged, and Osiris suffered. While man plays out his show, the manipulator remains unseen. We know him not by sight, but by the ways his puppets move. And occasionally the curtain stirs that hides him from his faithful audience. Oh, but we are grateful, even for just that movement behind the curtain. Grateful." Simon stared. At last Cadrak looked away from the puppet show and met his gaze. A strange, sad smile crimped the corner of the friar's mouth. For once the look in his eyes seemed to match. "Ah, boy," he said, "and what should you know of religious matters, anyway?" They strolled for some while longer before Brother Cadrak at last took his leave, with many thanks to the young man for his hospitality. Simon continued to walk aimlessly long after the monk was gone, and the patches of sky that could be seen through the roof tenting were filmed with early darkness before he remembered his errand. At the spice merchant's stall, he discovered that his purse was gone. His heart thumped triple time as he thought back in panic. He knew that he had felt it swinging on his belt when he and Cadrak had stopped to buy chestnuts, but could summon no memories of having it later in the afternoon. Whenever it had disappeared, though, it was definitely gone now, along with not just his own farthing piece, but also the 2 pennies entrusted to him by Judith. He searched the market vainly until the sky holes had gone black as an old kettle. The snow that he had barely felt before seemed very cold and very wet as he returned empty-handed to the castle. Worse than any beating, as Simon discovered when he came home without spices or money, was the look of disappointment that sweet, fat, flour-dusted Judith gave him. Rachel also used this most unfair of gambits, punishing him with nothing more painful than an expression of disgust at his childishness, and a promise that he would work fingers to the nubbin, earning the money back. Even Morgenes, whom Simon went to half in hope of sympathy, seemed faintly surprised at the youth's carelessness. All in all, although spared a thrashing, he had never felt lower or more sorry for himself. And that's the end of that section. So we're going to stop there. Okay. Okie dokie dokie. So sorry we lost the focus there for a moment. I'm not sure what happened. I don't think I did anything. Maybe I just leaned back. I think I need to get a more expensive webcam. But I'll worry about that another day. As long as you guys can still see all the fancy jewelry I'm wearing and the beautiful makeup and the nails, then that's all that matters in terms of my influencing career. Okay, so thank you. Good to see you as always. Good to spend time with you. I will be continuing on with the same chapter tomorrow at 7 or later today at 7 p.m. Those of you who are not planning to be there because of time zone differences or whatever, as you know, they're available both on Chris Fab's YouTube section, and also obviously they still remain up on my social media and accessible that way. And I think probably also there's some kind of links to them on tadwilliams.com. Anyway, doesn't matter. If you want to find them, you can find them. If you don't want to find them, if you want to escape them, that's your privilege too. In the interim, until I have a chance to see you again, I say thank you very much for joining me. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of the people that you care about. Take good care of the people that other people don't seem to be caring for, because we're all in this together. So again, I thank you for joining me. I will see you one way or the other soon, and I appreciate you. Peace.